Something I've become increasingly concerned about in this moment is the perpetuity on the media of trying to propagandize each other and their audiences in order to get Americans primed for a 9/11 style Patriot Act type legislation against their fellow American citizens. And increasingly, we are seeing stuff on the cable news that we would not even have seen the audacity for them to say after 9/11. And one of the clips that really caught my eye, right the day before Joe Biden is about to become president, and the day before this worldview is about to inhabit the Oval Office, the Department of Justice, and the National Security Services, was this clip of former intelligence official on MSNBC outright calling for the FBI and others to infiltrate and spy on fellow Americans. Let's take a listen.
We're going to have to reset our entire intelligence approach to these white supremacist militias, these dangerous ultra-nationalist organizations. I think we're going to have to look at greater surveillance of them. The FBI is going to have to run confidential sources. We're going to have to penetrate these plots long before they present a violent threat to our democracy if we want to have any hope of stopping these in the future.
And Crystal, what's so dangerous about this is the way that he couches that language is like, what, you're against, infiltrating ultranationalists and white supremacists? It's like, no, but you don't need a new law or new protections or anything else, in terms of legislation or extra money in order to do that. We have the largest security infrastructure on the planet. We have enough 10 times over here in the United States. You have 100 other Capitol Police officers, and this whole thing goes completely different. Just assign a few more officers on that day. And yet the reaction to this has been completely insane. We got news yesterday, let's put this up there on the screen, that the Pentagon is going to keep a residual element of 6,200 troops in DC. Now look, on a temporary basis, okay, fine. In terms of what we're going through right now. And even then, it makes me pretty uncomfortable. But we have a literal green zone in the heart of our city. You cannot even go to the National Mall. The bridges are cut off. And I don't think we've had enough of a conversation about how exactly that is going to, basically manifest itself in our politics for some time to come. And I don't even think it's a slow burn, a very fast, like lightning strike towards some sort of new Patriot Act, domestic terrorism type legislation, which I really believe is the opposite of what we need, will infringe on civil liberties. And I actually think will make the crisis 10 times worse if they do it.
Completely. It's extraordinarily troubling. Glenn Greenwald, of course, has been tracking a lot of this over, on his Twitter and also on his Substack. And want to give a lot of credit to Rashida Tlaib and other progressives who signed on to a letter saying, we do not need new domestic surveillance laws. We don't need a new domestic terror law. There are plenty of laws on the books. And like you were just saying, anytime people are just Jeremy Bash and the others who are making this case, they're very non-specific about exactly the powers that need to be and what exactly wasn't covered by the law already, what exactly tools need to be in the toolkit that aren't in the toolkit already. They always leave that off the table, and instead they just engage in this fear-mongering sort of generalist rhetoric, because the reality is we have more than enough of a police state, more than enough of a national security state already. But, if you think bigger picture, when you have a population that is terrified of each other, right, this only heads in one direction, and that is towards authoritarianism. That is towards feeling like you need more of a police state to keep the fellow citizens that you are terrified of in line. That's the direction that this is heading in. So when you see liberals who are cheering on and calling for more tech censorship. Yes, please shut down these accounts. Please shut down this speech. Please have more control in all of our lives. When you see these quote unquote liberals calling for, we need more of a police state, we need more of a national security state. I mean, that's exactly the slide towards authoritarianism that those same people have pretended to be so terrified of over the past 4 years. that is the track that we are on right now. And I do want to give a lot of credit to Rashida Tlaib and others who, Ilhan Omar has also been outspoken in this regard, who are able to see that bigger picture and say, listen, guys, I know this was terrible what happened at the Capitol the other week because of the failures of the massive security state that we already have in place and their inability to plan for this specific threat. But the direction that we are going in is a very troubling one that only leads ultimately to bad places.
Yes, once you expand this power, you can't take it away. Look at the troops, in DC, 6,200 troops. For what? For what reason? There's not riots. There's nothing happening here. And they're just going to exist like within a barracks. This is the capital of the United States. And you can see this all the way down the line. I mean, there will be another Republican administration or conservative administration, whatever the hell it is called. Once you give those people that power, they can classify whomever they want as domestic terrorists and then use that in order to spy on them. And they already have plenty of power. They have subpoena power. The FBI is massive. They have a counterintelligence unit and so much more. They can use their current infrastructure and turn it on and use law enforcement authorities that they already have, and empowering them and giving them even more money and more staff and more in order to go after each other just is the most dangerous thing. We've been talking about this a lot because I think it's so important, is that poll that you found about how other Americans see each other as the biggest threat. And with 20 years now of cable news propaganda of demonizing each other in this hot political rhetoric and the post-Cold War era, we now have it so that people actually probably wouldn't mind. The hardcore bases of each side of the party would not mind using the national security infrastructure in order to criminalize and go after the other side. And that's the most dangerous thing is, I think Tucker recently found this quote from Huey Long, which is like, if we ever have fascism in America, it'll come under the guise of anti-fascism. And it generally seems like this is something that we are going to see manifesting itself. And I hope, although I'm not optimistic, that the DOJ and the FBI and more under Biden do not pursue this, because we actually saw in the 1990s that empowering FBI and other domestic surveillance capabilities led to one of the largest right-wing backlashes and anti-government, protests and more in the history of the U.S. Almost since 1800s. We need to remember our history and our lessons from that time.
Yeah, I also love all these liberals. Suddenly everyone is talking about 9/11 style commissions. It's like this talking point just like popped out of the ether. Yeah. When we talked about Hillary wants a 9/11 style commission about Russia and Trump and, Jeremy, all of this rhetoric has just suddenly popped into mainstream discourse within the establishment Democratic Party in particular. And I love how they are uncritically citing the response to 9/11 as if this was a good thing. Let's do that again. That was amazing. That's worked really well for the country. That's been great for the world. That's been great for our citizens, for citizens abroad. Let's just find another excuse to go down that same path, as if, their minds have just been completely blank. But the truth is, whatever they may have said in public, Hillary pretending like she, regretted her support for the Iraq War, et cetera, it's not like they ever really changed their minds. It's not like they ever really adjusted their perspective that these expanded powers for the executive and this massive military footprint was a bad thing. They never really shifted. And so I think it's also very revealing now that they're uncritically citing the response to 9/11 as a model for us to follow in the future, the way that they actually felt about that path all along.
It's so funny that you're so right, which is, I'm thinking back to my original study. The 9/11 Commission was a total failure. And actually all it found was that if the FBI and CIA had talked to each other instead of following some bureaucratic nonsense, everything could have been stopped. All of the materials that they needed in order to combat terrorism existed in the arsenal of the U.S. government in 1999. Did expanding it do anything? No. Is everybody safer? No. Are we more divided than ever? Yes. So going down that path would only lead to more, I think, destruction, infringement of civil liberties in the United States, and broadly, and more importantly, it will tear us apart as a nation. It's something that I'm watching with great alarm kind of snowball through the elites in Washington. Very soon, I fear it is going to manifest itself in the White House and in the Oval Office. But we'll be tracking that. We'll be tracking that really closely.
Absolutely. It certainly seems like we're headed in that direction. All right, we're going to have more rising for you after this.